Hi, my name is Heavenly Harris, and I'm coming to you from my kitchen here in central Illinois. Unfortunately, this week I was not able to make it to a public history site to visit or film, but I've been to several in the area. Unfortunately, none of the ones listed in the readings for this week or none of those websites. I've actually never been on the Atlantic coast before, so that's something that I would love to do eventually. But I still have been able to visit a lot of public history sites, and I'm going to talk about one today that's not too far from my home here in central Illinois. A few miles south of Interstate 70, which runs right through where I live, is a small town on the Illinois-Indiana border called Vincennes, Indiana. And Vincennes was actually a town, of course, inhabited by natives, but then a fort was erected there by the French. And then after the French and Indian War, the British took control of that fort. In Vincennes, there is a public history site called the George Rogers Clark National Historic Park, and it is ran by the National Park Service, and it is dedicated to George Rogers Clark, who was a lieutenant colonel during the American Revolution. He made a name for himself by taking a small group of American soldiers throughout the Ohio River Valley to places such as Kaskaskia and Cahokia, again near where I live, and liberating those forts, taking those forts and occupying those British forts. And this was really important. This wasn't a huge battle. It wasn't, I don't want to give the impression that it was one of the major battles of the Revolution, because it wasn't, but it was important. And if you visit the site or if you read on the website, you can understand why it was important. The importance of the Battle of Vincennes and the occupation of the forts throughout the Ohio River Valley was that after the war, after the Americans had won the Revolutionary War, this occupation in the Ohio River Valley, my home here, gave the Americans legitimacy to claim this land also, so that they didn't only just claim the land on the Atlantic in the original colonies, but this land as well. So that's the importance there, and that's why this public history site has been erected and dedicated to George Rogers Clark. Public history is really important for several reasons. One of them is that it preserves landmarks, which is important, and preserves artifacts, which is obviously important, but I think that it does something that's even more important than that. Public history works to engage the public. For many of us that are taking this course, we would be interested to read a book about the Battle of Vincennes. It was a really interesting battle, even though it wasn't large. Or we would be happy to read the National Park Service's website about what they had to say about George Rogers Clark. That would be interesting to me, I know. However, that's not really the majority of Americans, and that's not really the majority of our students. The majority of Americans and our students need something more. They need to be engaged in history. They're not satisfied just to go do some research on their own. They need to see something, they need to experience something in order to really be interested in it. And that's what public history sites provide. You can see sometimes the actual structures, like the websites that were mentioned this week. The site at Vincennes actually does not have any of the original fort intact, so you can't see that, but you can see a model of it. It preserves artwork, it preserves weaponry, which is really interesting to a lot of people, or fashion, or anything related to the era, so you can actually see things. They also are often incorporate lots of technology and multimedia. I know that most of the national parks, in fact, all of them that I can think of that I've been to, provide a 20 to 40 minute video that allows you to kind of see the basics of what happened at that site, which is interesting to a lot of people. Something else that's important for a lot of adults is having some kind of manipulatives or technology or something that's there that can interest our kids. We have my husband and I have little girls, and so if we want to walk around and look at these things, we need something that they can be interested in. A lot of places have clothes that they can dress up in, or toys from the era that they can look at and play with, or places that they can just run around, so that we can kind of learn more about history, and that's important as well. So public history, important for a lot of reasons, but what I think is the primary importance is engaging the public, and the George Rogers Clark National Historical Park in Vincennes, Indiana does this.